But you have to apply this basic set of principles in very specific and different cases. And that is what doctors have to learn. So that we share a lot, but still we have to be careful, sensitive, to try to see how we can apply it in very different circumstances. And that is essentially the logo. If UNESCO would have a logo, it would be this one. Think globally, but act locally. Thank you very much.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're listening to Dr. Henk A.M.J, Director of Ethics of Science and Technology at UNESCO. We will return to our speaker in a minute for our traditional City Club questions. We encourage you to formulate questions for our speaker now and remind you the question should be brief and hopefully to the point. We welcome all of you here and those listening to WCPN 90.3 FM, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Radio broadcasts of the City Club are made possible through the generous support of Case Western Reserve University. Our television broadcast partners are WVIZ, PBS IdeaStream, and Time Warner Cable. Television broadcasts are supported by National City and Cleveland State University. Our live webcasts are supported by the University of Akron. We are pleased to welcome guests at tables hosted by our programming partners, the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine's Department of Bioethics. Thank you for joining us today. We are also pleased to welcome to our forum students who are here as part of our City Club student program. Participation of these students is made possible by a generous contribution to the Forum Foundation endowment from City Club member Robert Weisberger. With us today are students from Canton South, Collinwood, and Rhodes High School. Would our student guests please stand and be recognized? Now, we'd like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphones today are City Club Director of Development, Jessica Allen, and Director of Community Relations, Missy Toms. Now, first question.
Good afternoon, Dr. Have, and welcome to Cleveland. Thank you for being here. Several of the values you referenced as becoming more widespread within bioethics have important connections with religious traditions, especially solidarity, social responsibility, human dignity. Does UNESCO take faith traditions and religious values into account in its research and work, and do you have consultation with experts from religious institutions and organizations?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, we have to take it into account because ethics is closely related to religion. At the same time, we try to show that ethics is also different from religion. What we did in the development of these declarations was that we also consulted religious representatives. We organized also a meeting in Paris with representatives of different religious groups to ask them what they thought were the basic values in bioethics. And what was quite striking was that they could all agree on the set of values, although the justification of the values was quite different. So they could, for example, agree on the principle of human dignity. Even if, of course, for religious people, this is related to the existence of God. But people from, let's say, a more communist ideology or socialist ideology, they could also agree that this was an important value, although, of course, their justification was different. So what we try to make clear is, on the one hand, that there is a difference between how values are justified and what is the relevancy or significance of values. So it could be justified in a particular culture, but the significance goes beyond the culture. Now, of course, we have a lot of work to do in that respect because in some countries there is no space for ethics because everything in morals is dominated by religion. So we try to show that there is an essential difference between the two, also in matter of procedure, because religion provides answers. It gives us guidance. It knows what is good and what is bad. In ethics, you say, well, the emphasis is more on justification, argumentation, trying to find out how you can proceed in issues that are not clear and where the answers do not always apply. So it's also the capability of reflection and argumentation that is important. And that we have, of course, we have that experience in our Western culture, because philosophy and theology were separated in the medieval times. But in other cultures there is not that history of separation. So we have to make clear what essentially are the characteristics of ethics.
Professor, thank you. This is a follow-up question, and I'm going to maybe zero in a little bit on that. I can't help but notice that you teach at a Catholic university. From the answer to the last question, it appears to me that you're saying that the Vatican, the Catholic Church, is part of that that brokered dialogue that you described in your speech. And I wonder, in the areas of reproductive health, euthanasia, perhaps, and in embryonic stem cell research, do you feel that the Catholic Church, as a result of that dialogue, has ever moved at all on any of these issues?
Yeah, your question brings me into a difficult position, because working, you can never deny your own history, of course, but working in UNESCO, I'm not supposed to represent any point of view. So in UNESCO, I'm not Catholic, I'm not Dutch. I'm an international civil servant. Because people can easily blame you that if you go to Saudi Arabia, then they say, well, you try to impose a particular view in our country. So no, I'm working for the organization, I'm not representing any view. But still, it's an interesting question. The Holy See is not a member of UNESCO. They're not a member of the UN system. They're an observer in the system. And they participated, of course, in the negotiations about the Bioethics Declaration. And they were very much in favor of it. They were in favor of it because the declaration is focused on fundamental, basic principles. It's not including more specific issues, like issues of abortion, reproductive technologies. Those are too controversial to touch. But they could agree on the basic principles. Now, if you have your question about whether the Catholic Church has moved, I think they did, more than they want to admit. Because if you look at the history of the thinking about abortion, for example, there have been different positions in the past. And the whole emphasis on, let's say, the whole stance they have nowadays in terms of morals is relatively new. So I would not be surprised, and if we also, as a European, of course, you say, well, you have to think in long-term perspective because this is a history of 2,000 years. It will change, but not in our lifetime. But it will change, as it has changed.